Oh my gosh, why is there a goat butt on your screen and not the beautiful face of Misty Morning? So, necessity is the mother of invention. Isn't that what they say, or something to that effect? I'm sure I butchered it. The wind is whipping today, and while I want to get grooming done so that I can stay on schedule and keep them, fully maintained the way I like them, videoing, apparently, when the wind is whipping through the barn, is a little more challenging. So as I was doing her hooves, I, of course, have the camera already set up with intentions of, just being able to hit the button, start it, and go after I'm done, right? We don't do hooves on camera because I grind them with my Hoof Boss. That's linked twice, once in the video link itself and once in the description box, 2 different stores. But yeah, that grinder noise is loud. It makes it impossible to really talk. And of course, it's an unpleasant video, to say the least. So I had to change up the angle of the camera because, again, as I was doing hooves, the wind literally knocked over the tripod and took it down twice, right? The first time I'm like, oh, I'll just move it closer to the wall. The second time I'm like, okay, I'm going to break my phone here if I'm not careful. Thank you, OtterBox, for protecting my phone from the disasters that I put it into. I cannot believe it hit the cement floor of the barn and is perfectly fine, but yay for protective cases, I suppose, which are a necessity on the farm here. So you're going to get a very different perspective of our grooming sessions today. You're going to get the side you never get to see, which is this side. Probably have to look at my rear end a little bit more than you want to, and look at the goat's rear end a little bit more than you want to. And I'm going to actually attempt to move you around with me because I need to keep the tripod sort of within reach in case it starts to tip again. I want to be able to catch it. I do not want it to take a third whack to the concrete. There's just so much luck that can hold out, right? So up on the stand is Misty Morning. This is our standard standard grooming process. We've done spring brush outs where all the cashmere or most of the cashmere is pulled out. We've done spring baths for everybody. I say we like there's somebody else doing it. You're with me, so you're doing it with me. And I've done show baths for those that went to the show back in May. And that included Misty. So she's had 2 baths already up until this point. Now, what I'm working on here, and this is kind of an angle you don't often get to see because it's their sensitive parts, right, is I'm going to call it the effect of after kidding and raising children, right? The back end here is where the kids come out. She's been washed since then, but she's also weaned her kids. And she was one of the goats who, after weaning and moving back to the adult pasture, the kind of, single with no kids pasture, she took full advantage of all of that rich grass and forage. And she got herself a nice case of digestive upset. So, I spot clean it, of course, but now we're really getting into the nitty gritty of cleaning out any remaining remnants of diarrhea, any remaining sticky stuff from just kids, pushing their way to her udder. And it's really, honestly, it's nothing, right? So I already brushed her whole side out while I was talking. What did that take? 3 minutes? It took me about 5 minutes to do her hooves, maybe a little more since I was playing catch with the tripod. And if it wasn't for this section back here, Total brush out time might be total 10 minutes for her whole body. This is going to take just a few extra minutes. And, you know, honestly, it's the back end of her. A lot of people would just say cut it or, you know, leave it and let nature take its course. It'll eventually grow out and fall out. That's just not the way we work here. If I can have them up on the stand and get them cleaned up, why wouldn't I? I need to put them on the stand anyway to do their hooves. Their hooves need done, and this varies goat to goat. It also varies depending on your pasture setup, your stall setup, what you have in your pastures. Do your goats run on stone or concrete at all? You know, so hoof trimming on average is somewhere between a required maintenance from, you know, every 4 to every 8 weeks, depending again on the goat and the setup. I target 6 weeks and I kind of bridge the gap, right? I think 4 weeks for my goats is too soon. They don't get that kind of massive overgrowth, but 8 weeks really becomes a bit too long. I find that's when they start to change their walk because their hooves are so overgrown. And certainly we don't want to do that. So the target is to have them up on the stand every 6 weeks. When I have them up on the stand, if I'm going to trim hooves and I'm going to take the time to pull them out of the stall, get them up on the stand and trim their hooves, I sure am going to brush them out. It's not going to take that much longer, and it's certainly worth the effort because it keeps the show maintenance down to a minimum. It also keeps spring and winter brush outs, which are kind of the mandatory brush outs, much less dramatic if I can keep them groomed throughout the year. And so that's what we do. We put them up on the stand every 6 weeks. Again, you and me, kiddos, it's me and the goats go up on the stand every 6 weeks. I do 2 to 3 goats a weekend, and I do them in one session on purpose, right? Just so that I can maximize the efficiency of pulling out all the tools, getting everything hooked up, right? I have to plug in the hoof grinder, not that that's a big deal, but taking them out of the tack room. So if I'm going to pull everything out, right, it's kind of like cooking or baking. If you're going to pull everything out, you want to make the most of all that effort. And so maybe you do 2 batches, maybe you pre-prep something else while you're at it, right? Just to maximize what you've done. I do the same thing with soap making or anything else that requires me to set up and clean up. And see, this mess here is a little bit of stuck poop. It's an interesting angle for you to be at. I don't often show you this side, but it's a little bit of stuck poop around her hair. And if I had left that there, would it have eventually worked its way out? Sure. But why? Why would I do that? Why would I let her have that potentially pulling and tugging when she's up on the stand and I can get this done quickly? I mean, really, that side's done. Now I'm going to reach under here and check her udder, which is nice and empty now. It's not completely empty. Her kids have been weaned for about a month, but it is smaller. Her teats are small. Her udder is, not producing milk anymore. So officially this side is done. We're going to spray her down with some detangling spray, detangling/conditioning spray. And I'm just going to rake that through. It does make the outer layer a little damp, but the way I liken this is sort of putting Rain-X or some other, protective coating on your windshield, right? It doesn't keep it clean. It certainly doesn't keep it from, interacting with the environment and all the other things, but it does help keep it from becoming a disaster, right? It does give it a little bit more of a protective coating so that dirt rolls off of it a little bit more instead of getting caught and tangled in it. If she does get vegetation in it, the vegetation tends to not get wrapped up around the hair, and it's easy enough to brush out. I go through it with 2 different brushes, and I've talked about this before. The slicker brush is my main working tool. It's what I use 99% of the time on everything. And then this pin brush is sort of my finishing tool. And that's it. Those are the only tools I really use for standard grooming. If I have anything unusual that comes up while I'm grooming them, I might, change a tool, and I certainly have a toolbox full of tools. But we're going to go for a ride now, all right? I'm going to try and do this at a reasonable pace so you don't get nauseous, but maybe close your eyes. I'm going to take you back to our normal front end, and where on this side I have the room for that front end view. It's not in front of the doorway. And I think you'll be able to see, and I will also hopefully not have you guys go flying from the wind. So I do have other tools in my toolkit that I use from time to time when necessary. And we've got a hot mess here that might make it necessary, so we'll see. But what you'll notice is really, despite the 6 weeks since the last time she's been on the grooming stand, her coat is fairly clean. There's not much in it. I'm going to duck under the camera and move my muck bucket. I was so focused on moving you, I forgot to move my muck bucket, which I use just to capture as much of the hair and the fuzz as possible. So most of her coat is pretty darn good, right? Like there's not knots here. There's some vegetation that's just brushing right out. We know her back end is a little dirty, so we'll work on that. But for the most part, the maintenance that we did and continue to do now throughout the year will keep this coat really easy to just do a quick brush out. She does have something going on here, and what it is really remnants of the cashmere spring cleaning, which is just absolutely killing me. She shouldn't have any left, but like despite everything, despite the fact that she was groomed multiple times, bathed multiple times, taken to the show and brushed at the show multiple times, I mean, took a grand champion senior doe title, she still managed to hide a little cashmere in her coat. And that's what this is. That's kind of, it's working its way out. And yes, again, if I left it alone, it would eventually just shed out normally. But why? I hated seeing her in the pasture with that. And I knew it was just cashmere that was getting balled up and needed to be assisted out of her coat. And again, you see, she's not hurting her in any way, shape, or form. It's just dead, shedded hair, undercoat really, that needs to come out. And now it's gone. And she doesn't have it anymore. And now there's nothing there that will catch and tangle. And the next time I put her up on the stand, she won't even have this little bit. And hopefully she won't have any diarrhea stuck in the back of her coat. So even that will go faster, right? So I did take a peek at the timing on my video when I moved you guys, and it was at 10 minutes. And it was at 10 minutes because I spent time at the back end of her working on the grooming of her, the dirt in her coat, the dirt and the poop. Let's be realistic. That's what it is. It's poop. And, I'll take that same amount of time here. So all told, I'm going to guess she's going to be on the stand about 25 minutes, which isn't terrible. If I do 3 goats and they all take 25 minutes, it's a 90-minute enterprise, right? Plus a few extra minutes to set up and clean up. For a single, for 48 hours of a weekend, to keep all of your goats maintained and invest, let's call it 2 hours in their health and well-being, feels pretty worth it to me. But again, that's me. Not everybody wants to do grooming. I find grooming to be very meditative for me. And I'm not a meditative person by nature. I think too much. I have to stay busy. I hardly sleep because my brain runs too much. But I do find that if I'm grooming and I'm not chatting it up with you guys, I am pretty zoned out, right? I'm pretty focused on the task at hand. It does quiet my thoughts a bit. I may be daydreaming a little bit, but not that running constant, what's next, what's on the list, what has to be done, what do I have to plan for, what do I have to research type of thinking. It becomes a much more relaxing process for me. And frankly, I believe for the goats, you know, they don't really dislike it. They don't like being corralled and brought up on the stand. That's a pain in the rear end. They know what's coming, and yeah, they'd much rather just be out in the pasture. But once they're up on the stand, with the exception of some of my bucks who are dramatic, they're pretty laid back about it. They know that they feel better when it's done. They know it's not a long session, except for the spring sessions, which are always much longer when we're doing shedding and pulling out the shed. But yeah, overall, the goats don't mind. I don't mind. And it gives me a chance to connect with you guys on a different level, right? These are filmed, obviously, because I do 3 goats at a time every weekend. These are kind of filmed in batch, and I'm only releasing 1 per week. I've tried releasing more than 1 per week, and they just don't get the same traction, right? So these are not real time, and they probably never will be, with the exception, of course, with the spring startup again, right? Those are sort of real time, and then I get to start to collect them, the first few anyway. So, you know, like I'm doing this in June. You may not see this until September. It doesn't really matter. The information hasn't changed. The way I'm grooming doesn't change. What we chat about, I try and keep it more focused on the health and well-being, genetics, you know, things that are timeless, so that these will hopefully be helpful in perpetuity, not just to us who like to catch up on Saturday mornings, but to new owners who need to groom their goats or need to understand what they're doing with their goats, maybe even to, you know, current owners who have their own routine and are looking to see how it compares to others, right? So that is the hope with these videos. I'm not looking for them to, they're not going to go viral. They're not anything that is, you know, too earth-shattering. Is that the right description? Probably. It's just a chance for me to connect with the goat, for you and I to kind of connect and chat. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat. So leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about these sessions, what I can do to either make them slightly more entertaining, or what you thought about these lovely new camera angles. You probably just got a really big close-up of my face there, which I did not intend. But I forgot that the camera is set in a slightly different place than normal. Thank you, Mother Nature, for creating a windy situation. All right, so she is really done from a grooming perspective. The reason I go over each side twice with both the pin brush and the slicker brush is the slicker brush tends to focus on the outer layers, which of course is most of the coat. But the pin brush gets a bit down in there, and it catches a few other little things you may have saw down there. The last thing I do at this time of the year, and in fact, we're going to start doing it year round now, is they get what, for goat purposes, fleas and ticks are not really the problem. It's lice, and it's specific goat lice. It's not lice that is, you know, like lice you would get on kids or anything else. So just like dogs and cats have a topical You know, they think the old Frontline and stuff like that. Goats have that. And so all I'm doing now is, quite honestly, the exact same thing you would do for your dog and cat if you were applying a flea and tick topical. Is I measured it out. I do buy it in bulk, of course. It doesn't come in nice pre-measured tubes. And I'd have weights on our goats so that I can apply the correct amount based on the weight of the goat, the size of the goat. And I just fill a syringe with the correct amount, goes on the back of her neck, and she is done. We'll pick a few eye boogies, and that's it. And you may have noticed that I threw away the syringe. I do not reuse syringes or needles or anything else that, you know, even with something like this, which is so simple, it's a topical. Yes, I could reuse that syringe 3 or 4 times for each of the goats. Why would I? That's not worth introducing any risk. They're sterile when they start. Once they're used, they're used. So it's one of the few plastic things I still throw away after a single use, and I just feel that that's better for the health and well-being of our animals. So I'm going to cut it there, just a little over 20 minutes as planned. Let me know what you thought about these ankles. Again, they're sort of required today, but if you liked them, we can continue to try and maneuver around and do some fun stuff. I hope you're all having a fabulous day. Until next time, there's work to be done. Bye for now.